Mexican American. I was born, raised, and have lived in North Carolina my entire life. But my family originates from a southern port state called Guerrero, located in Mexico. When you mention Mexico, some people might think of tourist areas such as the beaches, the mountains, the many indigenous monuments still standing before you today. Others might think of poverty, they might think of drug wars, they might think of the cartel, they ought to think about politics of decades of dictatorship and of poverty. When I think of Mexico, I think of the Mexico told to me by my parents. I think of their childhoods. I think of a place where children weren't able to continue their education because of situations beyond them. I think of poverty. I think of labor, and I think of ambitions snuffed out. It is the reality of many Mexicans living in rural areas that they don't finish their education. Oftentimes, an extra pair of hands is needed for labor. Tuition is simply not in the budget, or they're simply forced to mature faster than they ought to. For many families, education is not a guarantee, but rather a privilege. That is one of many reasons why my parents immigrated to the United States. And it's because of their ambitions, their hopes, and their dreams that I stand before here today. They weren't chasing shortcuts nor handouts. They were chasing their own ambitions and dreams. My mother was 16 when she was forced to drop out of high school so she could take care of her infant brother. It is the fate of many women in my family, and in my town in particular, that women don't continue education. My grandmother was married at the age of 14. She never attended middle school, nor did she ever attend high school. Many of my cousins, those older and younger than me, have been married, divorced, widowed, and are mothers. Not that there's any shame in motherhood or wifehood, but when it becomes... There's a cockroach. I'm not retaking this, I'm so sorry. But when it becomes your only option, when it becomes a box, when it's spoken of as a burden, that is when issues arise. It is not just the women who have this fate. It is the men in my family who also are forced to mature. Men share many duties, and oftentimes they are seen as laborers. They don't get to finish high school. They're sent out into the workforce, or they're recruited by crime syndicates. My father was in third grade, an orphan, when his uncle told him he would no longer be sponsoring his education. Since then, my father has been a workaholic. And although this is not a fate of every Mexican out there, it certainly isn't. It is important to acknowledge that it's the fate of many Mexicans out there, and it is the reason why many choose to chase opportunities here presented in America. This past June, I became one of two women in my family to graduate from high school these past couple decades. The other being my cousin, my senior by 2 months, who, an orphan, graduated from high school and is on her way of becoming a chemist with an internship in Mexico City. Our cousin, who shares a month difference in terms of age, just became a mother this past June. My niece is very adorable. We're not trade her for the world, but it's important to note the very differing fates of different women in my family. I have many cousins, as you can assume. I have a very large family, but one cousin in particular I would like to speak of is my cousin Christian. He and his siblings have been residing here in the States for about 4 years now. And this past school year, he dropped out of high school after a year or so of teasing from his peers. And it was a shocker to me to hear that he was facing bullying because of his status as an immigrant. Many of his peers told him there was no point in high school for him, that he would end up in a construction site one way or another, and he took those words to heart, as any impressionable 14, 15-year-old ought to. And he dropped out. And I don't tell you this so that you ought to feel sorry for him. It's important to question why there's a stigma against immigrants pursuing something that everyone else has the opportunity to. Which is why I would like to present to you a cockroach tried jumping me, so I like scooted over, and the last one was like my best take, so I'm just trying to continue from there. I'm so sorry. Anyways, this may be questioned. So a cockroach started dying in front of me, and it was one of those big ones that can fly, and I'm like really super scared of them. And the last take was like my best take, so I'm really hoping to just from where it was. I'm very sorry. Anyways, so I would like to present to you House Bill 11, initiated into legislation by George Cleveland, who is a Republican. House Bill 11 sought to stop undocumented individuals from continuing higher education post-high school. Informally or formally dubbed, no post-secondary education, undocumented illegal aliens. This House Bill was a bit of a controversial piece for its time. North Carolina was divided politically between the Republicans, the liberals, and so it was just a debated topic at the time. But it's not a new phenomenon. It's important to remember that. In the 1800s, Americans feared the Irish, then the Italians. World War II, it was a stigma against the Japanese, the Chinese, and following 9/11, it was Muslims or anyone from the Middle East, to be frank. And in our modern day, that stigma against foreign individuals has been placed upon the Latino Hispanic population. Different decades, different people, same fear, same reaction. You've heard of the red scare, the yellow scare, the Hispanic scare. But every generation of Americans is basically convinced it's that. But every generation of Americans is pretty much convinced that these new individuals flowing into the country is going to take your job, your opportunity. When Ellis Island opened, it was an influx of European immigrants, and that was its whole can of issues for Americans as well. But House Bill 11 proposed to stop undocumented individuals from accessing higher education. The argument being that these aliens were taking spots from well-deserving American citizens, that they were taking money, scholarships, opportunities, and, well, the thing is, something important to note is that undocumented individuals who are admitted into community colleges and public institutions, they pay out-of-state tuition. They're not afforded financial aid, and they have to go through the same admittance process as any other North Carolinian. They go through the same process. If they don't see financial aid, they are held to the same criteria. So, what issue is House Bill 11 really trying to solve? Sorry. At the time of this bill's passing, the state's population was approximately 9.5 million. Of that 9.5 million, approximately 800,000 were Hispanic. In 2010, the North Carolina Community College system educated approximately 880,000 students, and of that population, only 3.5 of them identified as Hispanic Latino. That's a very small percentage, realistically speaking. It's a very small percentage, and it raises the question, what financial aid were these undocumented individuals taking? What opportunities were they stealing? So few undocumented individuals were being admitted anyways, so what was the point of this bill? It never passed. It's House Bill 11 never made it past its first initial hearing, and no other bills of a similar nature have been proposed or made its rounds across legislation. In a paper titled North Carolina Community College System Study on the Admissions of Undocumented Students into the North Carolina Community College System, published in 2009, it is stated that there were many advantages for admitting undocumented individuals. For example, they list that by accepting undocumented individuals, North Carolina as a state benefited from an educated workforce, from lower crime rates, and from an increased tax revenue. If that's the case, why push House Bill 11? Was it truly concerned for North Carolinians, or was there a deeper message, such as, I don't know, the place of origin for chance? But House Bill 11 never became into law. But that doesn't mean it didn't create harm, and it doesn't mean it doesn't continue to create harm now in our current modern day and in our current political climate. The message around House Bill 11 is the message that has been around since the founding of America, probably since beforehand. It is a message of fear, and it is a message of hate. It's reached students like my cousin, many students left wondering, is dreaming even worth it? It reached families who have already been questioning, do I truly belong? It reached children, and it shattered their dreams. And education is not just learning, it's not just a chore, it's something Americans take for granted. Not everyone is afforded the same right to a free education. And it's important to remember that when we create policies, those policies reflect real life individuals. And when those policies aren't backed up by evidence, then what really are they? Fear has a way of shaping our beliefs, and it's important we don't allow fear to shape our nation. It's important that we look at statistics, that we look at evidence, and that we look within ourselves.